what's within the city council's power? How will you, in your newly elected role, or in your existing role, Chet, how will you attract jobs, businesses to the area? What role does the city council play in that? How do you see your role in that? If we could start with Tom on this one.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to what type of businesses that our community should attract, we shouldn't just only gamble on these large projects, especially international scope projects along the river that may be undone by a pernicious state or federal permitting regime. I would really like to see our city focus on small and medium-sized businesses, especially those in the manufacturing, because of the terrific transportation advantages that Longview has. We have a freeway, essentially a deep water port, a railroad, a growing airport even as well. We are the whole package when it comes to, especially in location, right on the Columbian and the I-5 corridor, being able to attract those small and medium-sized manufacturing and industrial businesses that want to get their product, whether it's to Seattle or across the Pacific. We are well located, especially with our tax regime as opposed to Oregon. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I don't like to use the word, poaching businesses from Portland, but I really think that, especially if we market ourselves and use the bully pulpit of city council to be able to market ourselves for not just developers, like in the previous question, but small businesses, making sure we have those great relations with our respective ports and the Chamber of Commerce, building on those to attract those types of businesses. I think that that's really key to our city's success. And that same flip side, going back to the point I said earlier, it's about attracting professionals and retaining professionals. So many, especially in the professional and we'll say unionized class too, of folks don't live in Longview anymore, and it's a real shame when they are commuting from Woodland, Chehalis, Centralia, or Vancouver, and they're here every day, but they're not part of our community. I really agree, and I think Angie put it most articulately about having that package deal for businesses. And I think that's why it's so, to attract businesses, and I think that's why it's so important that we don't view these issues such as homelessness, housing affordability, and infrastructure development. We don't view these issues in isolation. We view them together, because this is how we drive economic growth and move Longview forward into another, not just into the 21st century, but really set us up for a prosperous next 100 years, especially as our entire region grows and evolves.
Angie, if you can go next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I already mentioned briefly, but I definitely think that how we attract economically will have such an impact on so many pieces. Our vibrancy downtown, the ability to build our infrastructure even better, the safety of our town. One of the things that I have found in talking with people is we have so much pride as a community in who we have been, but who do we want to be moving forward? How do we harness that, the goodwill that our founding fathers had, but take that and package it and go, okay, so what is Longview going to be for the next 100 years? And how do we make sure that we respect those roots and our smokestacks and all of those things, but also look at how we bring in possible green energy or different styles of manufacturing and be able to take Longview into the next future. But we have to, as a city, know who we are and who we want to be so that we know who to go out and court to attract them here and bring them here. So that's something I think through the Economic Development Council, and I know we have an open position in the city for an economic development person, but that's something that I think that we really need to be active. And rather than waiting for people to come to us, who do we go out and find? Who do we go out and pursue? That's a key. The other part is that it's easy for us to be a bad news cycle when someone sees Longview's rated the worst for whatever, or they're known for this. when we think about what we want to be known for, how do we have our own city campaign that goes out and evangelizes the Longview that we're all proud of? You know, the city of magic, as you know, R.I. Long said it in 1923. How do we go and share that story and celebrate it at city council meetings? Why don't we start meetings and have, you know, like a top news that's come from the Daily News the past 2 weeks, and have, you know, slides of things that, you know, Parks and Rec have done. Like, there's so much good that I think we need to harness and make sure that we're evangelizing that, because when we do that, that will also help employers take notice and want to be a part of this community.
Okay. All right. Next up, Chet, please.
Yeah. The best way, I think, and I've been reading a book, Coming Jobs War, and they speak in there about how, and boy, Longview is a good example of this, that cities are losing big mills and big operations like that, just like Longview has, losing Reynolds, half a warehouser now, and Longview Fiber, or whatever they call it now, it's gone through 3 or 4 different ownerships, and it's a lot smaller company. So we got to look at what we can do. If we're not going to get unless we get really, really lucky, and that's what it's all about. Is, you know, just like climate tried to make climate tried to get that plant in there. Well, the greenies up there with Inslee got that thing stopped up. So, you know, you hear people want jobs, but then you turn around and they don't support them. So I'm not sure how we do that. That in itself stopped about 3 or 4 different other companies that were looking to come in here, but they were waiting to see what happened with that Klamath project. So you know, outsiders came in and shot us in the foot. We didn't shoot ourselves in the foot. Anyway, besides that, quality of places, I think, where we need to go. And everybody has been talking about the same thing. We got to get it to where people want to come here. In the past, I've talked to people that own companies, or a couple doctors that were actually looking to come in here and stuff. They go and they look at what's going on in the city. Is it clean? Is it got good housing in it? One of the things is a big item is how the schools. How's R.A. Long? How's Mark Morris? You know, what's the ratings on those schools? They're doing better now, but you know, a few years ago it's terrible, and that would just chase people off, or because they just live in Portland and have their kids go to school down there, and they come up and work their shifts. But we got to really kind of look at what we do with all of our assets. Keep our parks in good shape. We got to market the city. We did have a economic development person, didn't get a thing done. You're just fooling yourself if you think you can hire a guy and all of a sudden you're going to get 1 million jobs. It's so competitive out there that it is tough. I serve on the EDC board, and I promise you, we're working hard every day to try to get people in here. Quality of place, airport. I serve on this airport board. Got a new manager, and that thing's really going along well. That brings new people in. Corporate jets have been flying in, and they're not flying in just to walk around. I mean, they're looking for things. And so there's stuff looks like it's coming down the road. Don't know what they are, can't tell you. Same thing, transportation board, serve on that. And we're, you know, making sure the bus system is fine to keep people moving around.
If you could wrap up.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and throw them in there. I'm on the 911 board. We went up to change that away from the county to a standalone public authority and build a new building for it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things we're doing in this community, but you don't see them if you haven't lived here for the last 15 or 20 years.
Okay, Spencer.
Yeah, so this is one of the other really good questions that we get asked, not only you know, here in forums or interviews, but at the door is, you know, people want to know that their government's actually looking out for their interests, especially with their local government. You know, this is an example of when I went back east last year for a month and then came home over an 8-day trip across the continent. Every time I stopped and talked to anybody at a gas station or a truck stop or a diner where we'd stop, you know, because I wanted to compare what it's like living over there versus here. People want hope overall across the whole country, and that's still true in our community. You know, having grown up here and knowing family members that lost their jobs when Reynolds closed 20 years ago, you know, that is still the case when a business closes down here. When people lose their jobs in this community, I know who they are, not just through, you know, the political spectrum, but and activities, but through my other jobs I've had, you know, as a server in multiple restaurants, as a delivery driver for a restaurant. I know these people, and I know that they're looking out for somebody. They're looking for somebody who's going to look out for their best interests. People don't buy or build here oftentimes because they get the stigma that this isn't a nice place to live. And I think that that's due in part due to our other systemic issues of, you know, the homeless crisis and the housing crisis, which government isn't actually treating as a crisis. And I think that's a big problem. If you're going to label something blank crisis, you need to actually act on it versus kicking the can around and not actually doing anything, waiting around for federal subsidies, et cetera. But, you know, we've been struggling for decades. You know, it started in 1991 when Judge Dwyer handed down the decision finally about the spotted owl. People lost their jobs then. People continued to lose their jobs as the economy's changed and the economy's declined. Thankfully, the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts are rethinking the spotted owl designation. Not a lot of people know about that. That's sort of a side topic and sidetrack, but you know, Longview is purpose-built for industry. Angie, I know you mentioned, you know, the Magic City, R.A. Long's planned city. That's still true today. You know, we have one of the deepest deep water ports on the West Coast. We don't have to deal with some of the same portage issues that an actual ocean frontage port has to deal with. Our port is very competitive. Our port still has empty land at Barlow Point that I know some people want to keep pristine and protect as an open farm field in a swamp valley, but that serves the people of our community in Southwest Washington no real purpose. I think we need to continue to work with our port. I have a good relationship with our port commissioners. When I was 15, I was appointed to the Parks and Rec Board for the Port of Longview, and through that, my relationship with our port people has grown and grown since then. We don't have a delegate that reports with our port commission on city activities. The port commission does not have a delegate that reports to the city. These agencies need to communicate better and coordinate better. I'd really like to see more development out at the Barlow Point area. A lot of that property is within the city limits of Longview. Now, talking about small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and big businesses, we don't need to rule out at this point the big businesses. What we need to do is we need to, as a city government and as a county government and as a people in our community, we need to rally with the state to oppose bad regulations that keep our jobs out of here. Small businesses, I'll wrap up here then. You know, small businesses, yes, they're the backbone of our workers, and they're fantastic, and they're getting a bad hand dealt to them by the state with COVID restrictions. But as far as big businesses go, big businesses pay the bills. There's more tax revenue garnered from commercial property and bigger industrial project property than there are on single family homes or small businesses and mixed use projects. We still need to look out for these bigger projects and support them, and you know, rally against the bad state initiatives that hold us down and have been for, you know, 30, 40 years now. So I hope I answered that question.